Welcome back to episode 54 of the Disorganized Wizard Club podcast. My name is Alex, and I'm here as always with Adam.
Hi.
And Cam.
Hey.
And we're a group of Ottawa-based players that play just about anything and everything that we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournaments, stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
Yeah, hopefully. I help Cam a bit.
I'm already as good as I can ever be.
Well, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign.
No, I've capped out. I've hit the ceiling of Magic skill. No one is better than me, and no one ever will be.
I saw your draft deck from Saturday.
Yeah, I was just in a bad seat.
This show, as always, is brought to you by WizardTower.com. Check out WizardTower.com for all your Magic single needs for articles, podcasts, events. If you're here in Ottawa, great events, great store, great product.
Ixalan singles pre-ordering is now available, I believe.
Yep. Pre-ordered my Jaces when we were recording. Was it last week's episode?
Yep.
You
You believe in that card, huh?
Nope.
Make sure they sell you four. Make sure they sell you four real Jason.
Was
not
it
two Jason, two
No,
illusions.
I just think it's going to go up in price.
Was it on the
profit.
podcast or before the podcast that I said you were like I don't know if I want to spend it. It was like 15 or something, right? You're like, I don't know if
Yeah,
I
it
want
might
to
have
pre-order these Jaces, and I was like, yeah, but what's the hit rate on Jace? Like on the speculation, I can't remember if I said it on the podcast or not, but I'm like, the hit rate on Jace is pretty high, right? Like it's like 50% that like it goes
Yeah.
up in price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you lose this one, well, just pre-order the next one.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Kim, as you were alluding to, you won something this weekend.
You won a tournament.
I did win a tournament. Please interview me. First question.
What tournament did you win?
So it was the Wizards Tower Player of the Year tournament.
Player of the Year.
Hey-o.
This is where we put air horns in.
Yeah.
Which I would like to point out now, this podcast is
2 for 2.
2 for 2 on
Since
winning.
we started.
Yeah.
We started.
Adam, if people haven't been listening since the beginning of the podcast, Adam won the Wizard Tower Player of the Year last year.
Which means all my events were free, including everything, sealed, pre-releases, Modern
Yeah.
Masters.
And now-
It was a pretty good year.
Cam is the current Player of the Year.
What's
Yeah.
cool actually is that so Cam started right away when he won it.
Yeah, it started immediately. Like
It started
it's already
immediately, but
effective.
mine was a delay, and it started in January, and it goes until the end of December. So
Okay.
currently, Cam
So
and
now
I, who
you're
are
both Player of the
roommates,
Year.
We're a simultaneous Player of the Year.
we're both
roommates.
simultaneous Player of the Year roommates. Like
And we're going to be a two-headed giant team.
and we're
So, like,
playing the two-headed giant as usual.
there's no way we can lose if it's just two Player of the Year headed giant.
I can't wait till we lose because like whenever we lose in two-headed giant, it's also comical. Like we just get smudged.
Oh, yeah.
Our record in two-headed giant is like actually not very good,
No.
but it's pretty fun.
But it's never like us making a big mistake or anything. It's just getting like crumpled by like insane decks.
Oh yeah, what was the one where the guy just like
Sundering Titan us like twice.
yeah, but he ramped into it like,
Yeah.
like turn 5 or something.
We each had like 3 lands. He's like, oh, blow up 2 of your lands each. Like the
Yeah.
next turn, get the rest of them. Like,
yeah because
Jeez.
because we were playing all 5 colors across both our decks, right?
Yeah.
And it
Nice.
wasn't. We got smushed by it's just stuff like that. We just got like Sundering Titan Invocation or whatever, or I guess it was a master.
there was one time I was playing like a red-white, just straight red-white deck, and we drew like, we had gone through like the top 20 cards of my library and didn't find a white source.
He just never found a planes. We died, and like that game was still extremely close because
Yes.
I was playing like a busted combo deck basically, and two-headed giant. I was playing 4 Faith of the Devoted, and then just 19 cycling cards because it triggers on both opponents in two-headed giant, right? So
Jeez.
that was the only match we lost, and we played like 4 rounds around. Every other team we beat, we're just like, how did you guys lose? Like,
Yeah.
you guys are just playing a constructed deck. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty gross. Like, it was pretty good. But yeah,
So Cam, tell us about your tournament. How did you go about winning the Wizard Tower Player of the Year?
Well, I had success.
wait, what was the format? That's probably better.
Well, yeah, that's going to
The
be
format
on the streaming.
will-
That's going to be in the story.
Yeah, be
He's not
explained
going
in
to
the-
give that kind of information.
Yeah, well, I'm a very expressive guy.
Oh yeah, go
Yeah.
on then.
So the day prior, the Friday, I had successfully defended my master's thesis.
Oh,
Hey,
air horns
congrats.
number 2.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to make a note of where this is now. Okay, got it.
So yeah, I had done that, and then went out like celebrating, drinking with some friends afterwards.
We went for sushi too.
Yeah, we went for sushi. Then I went drinking. Then I was hanging out at a friend's place. Got home at like 4 a.m. or something. So got like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and then this tournament started at 9 for some reason because I guess it has a lot of rounds.
Yeah.
So got like 3 or 4 hours of sleep. We were already kind of late getting to the event, so we didn't have time for breakfast, didn't have time for coffee, didn't have time for anything.
So I was already grumpy.
Yeah, we were both like hungover and grumpy, and so I sit down, like build
So
my
just
sealed.
the usual.
Yeah, I build my sealed pool, and so like being not in a functioning state of mind, I just default to 5-color trash pile control with Approach of the Second Sun.
Nice.
Which, yeah, you know,
I like where this is
right
going.
on. It's, you know, playing in my comfort zone.
Uh-huh.
In my first match, I think it was first match, game 1, I got 2 game rule violation
Out of
warnings.
3.
And the judge was like, you know, if you get like any more of these, they're all game losses. So like, please reconsider your decisions. So I had to play like super tight for like the rest of Sealed. Because at any point in the rest of Sealed, any like little mistake is a game loss.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped me, like, I guess, play a bit tighter. But it ended up going 2-1 and then drawing in the last round because you just needed 2 wins in Sealed portion, and then it cut to draft.
And the record reset for
Yes,
draft.
the record reset and game rule violations reset. So I had 2 more to give in the draft. But I had like coffee and stuff at that point, so you know,
Yeah.
I wasn't
Everything was looking
I wasn't
up.
casting sorceries on end steps anymore,
Okay.
which, you know, would have been sweet.
Head step cast this Approach of the Second Sun.
Yeah.
I can't get you.
But
Wasn't you tried to activate Ifnir Dreadlands or something? Is
well,
what it
okay, so
was,
I had
actually?
I had a Manalith and a Swamp and an Ifnir Dreadlands. So I had the requisite 2 black sources and the Deadlands to activate it, but I just forgot to tap the Manalith and like tapped 1 black instead of 2, and like that was a game rule
You just called
violation.
your judge on yourself anyway,
Yeah, my opponent,
which is the classic
Yeah.
like beeper thing.
yeah,
like
my
our
opponent
team of
noticed,
players,
but then I called judge on myself. So.
yeah, our team of players is pretty famous for being like, Judge, I need a warning.
So yeah, didn't get any game rule violations, but that didn't mean that I continued to play any better because the draft that I played was
Oof.
it was not good.
Your draft deck was horrible.
I did not expect it. It was gonna be like lose the first round and then like hope that the decks I'm playing against were bad enough that mine can like squeak out 2 wins to make top 8.
Uh-huh.
I got like a bunch of unquestionable thirsts like in the middle of a pack and like some other good like red removal and like good like blue-red spells, but just like never any creatures for the deck. So then like in the last couple picks, I was like, I mean, I should have switched out, but I like didn't notice because I had been taking like deserts and unquenchable thirst and stuff. And then like in the middle of the second pack and the third pack, I just like had to scramble to grab creatures. So I ended up with like almost entirely relying on like slow 5-drops, like an Ominous Sphinx, a Shimmer Scale Drake, like the 5/3 Manticore that pings them for 3.
Okay, yeah.
Manticore of the Gauntlet,
Yeah.
5/4.
5/4. And so my deck was just like not a lot of little creatures. All of those were bad. Okay removal, and then like 5-drops that I just needed to live to do anything.
Mhm.
Which didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen. Went like lost the first round, won the second round, and then played
How?
against Phil.
How?
How?
How did you win the second round?
It was like Xaxes. It was like attack you with my flyers, put you to 2. Like I have exactly 2 spells, ping you with Firebrand Archer. Like
Oh, Firebrand
Jeez.
Archer's lit though.
yeah. It was close.
Okay.
And then round 3 of the draft got paired against Phil, who just like had a string of like just like removal, Scarab God.
Yeah, Phil's deck was
It was very good. It was just
Bust,
it was
though.
blue red with good creatures and a Scarab God and better removal.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't 3 games. Like I took a game off him at some point. I don't know how. I think he stumbled on lands. But anyway, he crushed me in 3, and then because he doesn't think he's going to be able to stay here for all of 2018.
he wouldn't have, and also I would have made him leave because we had plans.
Oh yeah, and like for reasons he like wouldn't have been able. He wouldn't be able to use the entire prize, and probably also wouldn't be able to stay for the entire tournament. So he conceded to me. So thanks, Phil. So yeah, that was the 2-1 of with my like terrible draft to get
Yeah,
the
because
top
you
8.
needed to 2-1. Any player with a 2-1 or better record from the draft would be the 8 people.
Right,
top
because there were 16 people in the draft, so the upper half of those qualify for top 8. So like,
Okay.
Phil got me into top 8. Props to him, not props to me.
Definitely not.
But then I got to flex my like, I'm really good at standard skill, and played green black energy in the top 8. So it's a deck I'd played a bunch. I've talked about it on the podcast. It's something I was familiar with, and I'd been looking at like the GP top 8s recently, and you know, a list had top 8'd, and so it seemed fine. Made a sideboard that I thought would be okay, and yeah, the games were best of 5 in the top 8, and just got to like played against zombies and killed them with Aether Harvester. Played against Teamer, and just I don't know, the games worked out well. Like Teamer can't really beat big long test cubs, so I made a bunch of those and won.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just like ran over top 8 because it was fast. It felt like when we were on the road.
Not really. Like the zombies match was actually pretty close because
That was against Navarai, right?
yes, against Andrew Navarai. The zombies match was close because I think I ran him over game 1.
Well, that guy's no slouch either.
No, he's pretty good. But like I ran him over game 1 because he got stuck on 3 lands. Then the next 2 games, I got stuck on 2 lands, and I was like, well, this is how I go. And then won the next 2, like making it through harvesters and like just I don't know. When you're like down to like when you're dead to any game loss, like I don't know, I was just playing super carefully and like it ended up working out, drew well. So
And it seemed fast because we were only halfway to Montreal when I think you won.
And then who'd you play in the semis?
I played against Mike.
Mike, previous DWC podcast host.
Yes,
Nice.
Mike Brierly.
Too busy, too cool. No.
Dumpstered him.
Yeah, he was on Teamer Energy. And yeah, I won 3 games to 1 in our best of 5. The game I lost was to 3 Bristling Hydras.
That card's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Wow.
to 3 Bristling Hydras that I had to like make a bunch of trades with, and then the third one just I didn't have anything left, and it ran me over. But then, our next games were just like I would make a really big long tusk cub that he couldn't deal with because like Teamer Energy, all the removal is red based, right? Like they have to harness lightning it, but if you just make it bigger than they have energy, like they're dead.
Okay.
Just keep attacking.
Yeah.
So I did that. He also died to an Obnixilis one game, and then yeah, that was pretty good. And then in the finals, we the other finalist, this is sweet, was Jacob, if any local player knows him. Jacob Caillou, but he was on Blue Black Mill, like
Yeah.
fraying sanity.
He actually made it to the finals of Blue Black Mill.
Yes.
What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
Love
like
it.
Vessel
He was-
of Paramnesia, like 4 fraying sanity, 4 startled awake, and then just like fatal pushes.
I think he was playing compelling arguments
Oh, yeah.
too, like
4 compelling arguments.
Love it.
Hypno Rivulets, just
Yep.
mill him out.
Got him.
He beat, I don't know what he beat in the quarters.
He played against Teamer Energy, and then he played against Green White Ramp.
Yeah, he just like, beat Team Energy and
Jeez.
Green White Ramp like to get to the finals playing Mill.
That is incredible.
Yeah. His list will be up on the Tower website if anyone wants
Yeah,
to
it
check
is.
it out. It's already up, I think.
Yeah, so his list is up in first place. That was his condition, is because he also, like, due to his work schedule, wasn't sure if he could take advantage of the first place prize. So he said that I was fine getting the first place prize if we split, like, we chopped top 8, or if we split first and second, so that he comes first and gets second place prize, and I come second, because he just
Okay.
wanted Mill to win it.
He
Technically,
just wanted Mill to
He
be in first
wanted,
place.
he
Yeah.
wanted Mill to be listed
He's
as
like,
the
yeah,
first
you
place
can have the
winning
prize,
deck.
but like, I'm first place with Mill.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like it's a troll. He's such a
Yeah.
troll, man.
That's awesome.
He is like a pretty big troll too. So,
Right. Well,
like,
no, because he admitted to this, like, when the top 8 pairings were being announced, he was kind of like standing there being like, oh, please don't let me play against this person. Please don't let me play against this person. We're like, why do you want to play against him? Is it like a bad matchup? He's like, no, that's the only person that won't get tilted. I want to play against someone who will be tilted to lose to Mill.
yeah, it was like the one guy in top 8 who just like never gets tilted ever. And he was mad he got paired in because
Yeah,
he
got
wanted
paired
everyone
in.
else to get super salty.
Yeah, because he milled him out and he's just like, oh, yeah, okay. Well played. And like left. He's like, I just wanted to tilt people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty great.
Oh, I love
So
it.
yeah, that was my like bumbling through a tournament to win.
Right on.
That's actually hilarious because
That's exactly how you won it.
yep, that is exactly how I won it. If people will recall, were we doing the podcast when I won it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you
I
like,
remember talking
you
about
If
like,
you recall,
got into the draft on breakers and then like
no,
also
because it went
squeaked-
draft then sealed for some
Oh
reason.
right.
that
You
year.
like got into the second portion on breakers and then like someone
No, then I went out. I didn't lose
Oh,
a
right.
single game of sealed. My sealed deck was nuts. Both Phil and I had Noxious Gearhulks in our sealed decks. We never lost.
Oh yeah.
That card's
Yeah.
unbeatable
And then Phil conceded to you as well.
in the finals
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
he,
neither of us played the
at the
finals.
time he was working Grand Prix events, so he couldn't play on weekends. So
Yeah.
second place was free weekday events, right?
Oh.
So it was like literally pointless. And also I had to go to a concert that night, which I also had to do this player of the year, but this player of the year did not go well for you, boy.
Yep.
Yeah, my sealed deck was really bad, and I just did not play Magic a bunch of the games.
Mhm.
But that's okay because Phil and I, that's one of the reasons he had to leave early. We were going with a friend of ours, a different friend to DreamHack Montreal,
Okay.
which was sweet, by the way. I didn't realize the DreamHacks had gotten like that big, and like we knew
Was
a guy
it that
who,
big?
yeah, it was like where Grand Prix Montreal was in the exact same building, but it was like
Okay.
the entire place was like full, like probably like
Jeez.
800 people brought their desktops and they were just like landing, but they also had like a Counter-Strike tournament. There was like pro teams there, like a bunch of pro teams.
Oh wow.
There was a StarCraft tournament going on the other side while it was going on, like Hearthstone, which is why I was there, was like there was a Hearthstone Grand Prix and I was doing work for covered stuff for it,
Okay.
like for Liquid Earth. And like actually Platinum Pro Eduardo Sagilek top 8'd it.
Really?
with like this like brew that he made of like a rogue deck. He's like, yeah, like because it was last hero standing. He's like, I just won every game one basically in the Swiss of the tournament. Like he 6-0 did one.
And not a
last-
rogue deck
last-
as in like an unknown
oh.
deck, but like the rogue class
the
in
rogue class.
Hearthstone.
Yeah, but was
Yeah.
also a rogue deck.
Yes.
So anyway, it's pretty cool to talk to him.
Nice.
So I talked to him about like Hearthstone mostly, but we talked about some Magic and stuff. I was asking about like the Hour of Promise, like would you first pick Hour of Promise? The question, you know,
Oh, yeah.
he's like no. I was like arguing with him about it. I was like, you're a fool, you know. Like, it was pretty funny. So yeah, we were hanging out for a bit, but it was actually sweet. It was like you get like free Monster like energy drinks, like as many as you want. You just go up to the bar and you're like, yeah, give me like the Java flavor. Like it's pretty bad. Like I
Just
never.
fueling.
That's
the game.
pretty
Dude, it's
unhealthy.
bad. It's really
The
unhealthy.
gamer
Like
lifestyle.
I
yeah.
never drink energy because that stuff's like terrible for you, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I drank like 3 or 4 the first like 5 hours, and then I like crashed by like dinner time. I was like,
Well, yeah.
like sleeping at a like Hearthstone tournament, you know. But I watched the Counter-Strike finals, which sucked because the Brazilian team showed up late and took a game loss in the best of 3 finals, and then lost because they were hungover, and then lost to North, like the Danish team.
Jeez.
So it was a 1-game finals. You know how pissed I would be if I had paid? Like I'd press pass, so it's fine. Like, you know how mad I would be if I paid to go see? Because I watch Counter-Strike and I do
Yeah.
go to tournaments and stuff, right? And I'm really
Yeah.
big into competitive Counter-Strike and stuff. If I paid to go see that and it was a 1-game finals,
That'd be annoying.
oh yeah, I'd be furious.
Wow.
But then it was kind of cool. We got into the DreamHack after party and stuff, which was open bar, dude.
Is it that different than like an early knockout in an MMA match?
Yeah, definitely, because like no matter what, you should get 2 maps.
Oh, I see.
Right? And like we just didn't and
Jeez.
they were hungover, and then they like raged on like some other player who like lost in the semis because he was like, damn, the worst part is my team lost to a team that was hungover. He's like, I'm so embarrassed. And then they like freaked out on him. It's like this huge drama like at the after party. The guy like wouldn't go because like crazy like Brazilian team like threatened to kill him. Like dude, it was crazy. It was like a huge drama, man. DreamHack was wild. But anyway, my point is like the event was sweet itself,
Yeah.
and it was like cool if anybody is like into like esports stuff. Like DreamHacks are like really sweet. They give you like tons
Nice.
of free swag. They had like VR stations where you could try out like all these like crazy VRs that like water and stuff. Like
That's awesome.
yeah, it was like really sweet actually. Like I was kind of like when Ryan told me, he's like, all right, we're gonna go cover this Hearthstone tournament. I was like, ugh, all right, fine. And he's like, you need to drive. And I was like, I don't want to spend money. He's like, I'll pay for hotel and gas, everything. I was like, fine, I'll go. You know, like, because I didn't want to go because I didn't realize it was a DreamHack. I just wasn't paying attention. And then we like showed up and I was like, wait, that's like North. That's like the CS team that like won one of the last like major tournaments. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I forgot this was going on. Like in my head, I knew that there was a CS tournament this weekend, but I just forgot. And I was like, oh, sweet. Like I'm here for the finals, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So this is my story instead of playing Magic because I got smushed. I got crumpled at Magic.
Right on, guys.
On
All I did-
competitive.
All I did was work.
Yeah.
I drafted last week once, but that was it.
Was I there? I don't think I was.
No, you're playing player of the month.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, which I crumpled.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that. Adam won player of the month
Yeah,
last week too.
that was easy. That was an easy smash.
Yeah, your deck was nuts.
I don't even remember what it was, but it was crazy. My semifinals game against Lauren was bananas, though. Do you remember that?
No, your deck was 4-color good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that's still
No, it was 4-color mythic rares. You had like Crested Sunmare and
yeah, that's what it was. And I had
And
two
Gideon.
and Gideon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember what was in that deck, and then I was like, oh yeah, because I had like River Hoopu, a bunch of life gain stuff, and like Crested Sunmare, and I just like literally made horses the entire top eight. Like I just made horses, man. My deck was crazy. River Hoopu was like busted though.
oh yeah, that card's great.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
Like that card's nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, my draft deck player of the month was like pretty good. Everyone thought, I think, at the table that I was going to go into blue red aggro, which I've been playing a lot of, and they thought I was going to force it. But I got past in pack 1 after I first picked an ambuscade because, I first picked a card nuts.
Yeah.
In pack 1, I got past a 4th last pick Oketra's Avenger.
What?
Yeah. And it was player of the month. And like 3 of these people needed to win player of the month to be able to compete in player of the year on Saturday.
Okay.
And I was like, I thought that you guys would be at least taking this a little seriously.
Yeah.
This is the best white common, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no way that this should be still here, like 4th last with the drags, right?
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, I'll take it. And then in pack 2, it just got fed like busted white cards. Like I'm like, okay, like I don't know what's happening. Like, so I just easily ran roughshod over that draft.
Nice. Did
Yeah.
you open both the Gideon and the Crested Sunmare?
I got past the Sunmare, I believe, in pack 2. and I'd already taken an Aven of Enduring Hope and a River Hoopu, which I got late in pack 1, which was like also very surprising.
Okay.
So I was like, well, I already have life gain. And at the time I was thinking I'm only green blue because I had also gotten like a 5th or 6th pick Unquenchable Thirst. That draft was really weird. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And so I was kind of like, well, I'm green blue, but whatever. And then when I got the Outcatcher's Avenger, I'm like, okay, I'm green white. Like white's clearly open. And then I got past Sunmare, and then I opened Gideon. And I was like, wow, you know. And I ended up just banned, basically splashing Decimator Beetle.
Yep.
Splashing a Decimator Beetle because I ended up picking up an Evolving Wilds. I had 2 Oasis Ritualists, a Manolith, and a Beneath the Sands.
Yeah.
So my logic was, okay, well, I have like 5 black sources. You know, I just play this Decimator Beetle because that card's
great.
That card's foolish. I like forgot how good it was because you don't see it as much anymore.
Yeah.
That card's nuts. So that was good. But yeah, my seal did not go great.
And so aside from our events, there was the only big event this past weekend was Japanese Nationals. Japanese national team looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Shota Yasoka, Yuya Watanabe, and then the guy who won the
Harane or whatever.
the tournament. What's his name? Let me pull it up.
Kenra Harane or something? Wait.
Kenta Harane, yeah.
Kenta, yeah, not Kenra. That's Earthshaker.
Yeah, like top 8 of this tournament was just 3 decks. So it was all Teamer Energy, Mardu Vehicles, and Mono White Eldrazi.
So when I first saw the Mono White deck, I thought this deck seems so underpowered to me, right?
Yeah.
But man, we played some games with it before the Player of the Year on Friday after Cam defended his master's thesis or whatever there. And I just couldn't win playing 4-color energy. I was just playing 3 like Teamer Energy, sorry.
Yeah.
Versus it, and like I just couldn't win. Like that deck, I don't know, it just lined up so well. Like Avacyn was obviously beating, but like you couldn't go in on a Long Tusk Cub because Eldrazi Displacer would get you. Like you're like a mid-range deck, so you only kind of have like 7 answers and no real card draw. So like Thought-Knot Seer would like take your most impactful card, like take your Galari Bringer or your Chandra, so you like couldn't kill the Thought-Knot Seer because there's like not a lot of ways. They just leave you with an Abrade. They don't care, right?
Yeah.
And so they just kind of picked you apart, it felt like, and then eventually just turn the corner and kill you in one shot. It was interesting. It was just like a better mid-range deck, it felt like, in that matchup. Like game 1, it could never win though against like Mono Red, we learned.
Yeah, no, the Mono Red match was pretty bad. But like, yeah, against Teamer, like you were saying.
Game 1 at least, like post board.
It just has the tools to counter whatever strategy Teamer tried to go for. If Teamer tried to go for like a large cub, it could displacer it to like reset all the counters. If Teamer tried to go for a bunch of Thopters, it could flip an Avacyn. If Teamer tried to go for Glory Bringer, it could just flash in Avacyn and block.
Yeah, I mean, it also had Walking Ballista to shoot down Thopters.
Yeah,
like,
that
it
too.
It could had Avacyn, which did everything. Like, it had Declaration in Stones if something went wrong. Like and then the thing is, like, you could make a Bristling Hydra and go like really big on it. But the problem was like a good Avacyn turn, if they have a board, means like you're losing your Bristling Hydra regardless because they'll throw everyone in front of it, or they'll just chump it with like something or
Draven
Inspector and then displace it because it doesn't have trample. Right, so like they would just make clues and leave open mana. Like they could just wait. Like they would just play the control game against you. Like, yeah, it was really annoying. Like Spawning Bed was really annoying to play around, which is weird because of Avacyn. Like they would like leave open mana, and then if you like don't attack, they're just like, okay, make 3 guys off Spawning Bed. That now, like if I do play an Avacyn, I can sack to flip. Yeah. Like it just like I was surprised. Like it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, out of all these Teamer decks in the top 8, there's 4 of them. Only one of them is actually Teamer. The other 3 are
playing Scarab God,
which
and we've been telling people to play. We've been telling people to play for months.
Yeah,
and funny enough, the like Watanabe and the guy Kenta who ended up winning the whole tournament were also playing Woodland Wanderer instead of Bristling Hydra.
Yeah,
which I was asking Cam what he thought about that, and he seems to think it's just better than Bristling Hydra.
This is trample
match.
I think, well, yeah, because it is trample. Like, so I played a lot of green black, and in green black mirrors and against like Teamer, I would take out some of the Hydras because it's so bad at creature combat. Like you don't want to spend 3 energy on it so that it can attack past a Rogue Refiner.
Yeah.
Like it's
not a good luck.
Just having more power than toughness, it's so bad at creature combat that like for the same cost you can make a 6/6 that is good at creature combat in this creature mirror. So
yeah. Woodland Wanderer is very good against a lot of decks. Like
it has vigilance.
Yeah, like it attacks and blocks.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's good at combat.
It's insane. But yeah, and then aside from that, like the Mardu Vehicles decks, both of them playing Thought-Knot Seer. One of them was playing Scorpion God.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, why not?
Just get crazy.
Yeah, like 1 Ballista, 1 Scorpion God.
I mean, if you're playing a Mardu Vehicles deck without Gideons, like you can do whatever you want. There's no more rules.
I had 2 Gideons.
He's playing 2, and then one in the
that's
sideboard.
pretty much
That's not
without-
4.
Yep.
And the other guy wasn't playing any in the main deck. It was just the 4 on
The
the board.
Thought Not Sears, ever
Mhm.
since Matt Severa won with it, right? People
Yeah.
kind of switched over.
Yeah, because Gideon sucks right now.
Long Toss Cup is an interesting card, actually, in like a lot of matchups, and that this kind of, in some ways, is inspired like our topic for today, right?
Yeah, we're gonna
Like,
discuss it a bunch.
Long Toss Cup is an interesting card,
Yep. So is this our segue into our topic?
I guess.
All right.
I don't know. I mean, there's not much else actually to talk about from like the weeks that was. And
All right. Okay. So we're gonna take out our week that was discussion, and we're gonna bring in sideboard discussion because it seems pretty good in this matchup of podcast first viewers.
Jeez. Yeah,
That was rough.
that was rough.
All right,
You
we're
know-
talking about sideboarding today.
Just in general, which somehow a podcast about getting better at magic is
I
the
haven't talked about sideboarding
most
yet
important
somehow.
thing. But we
Yeah.
mentioned talking about it a lot. We always bring it up, and then
I
never
feel like
do.
we touched on it in the preparation episode.
Yes, we have. We have touched on sideboarding a lot.
Every time there's a deck list, we'll be like, "Oh, this is in the sideboard for this," and that's cool. And like,
But
they'll bring it in.
occasionally topics will repeat themselves in some ways in that like there's more nuanced issues to discuss within that topic. And this is a broader one and I think more focused than it has been in the past regardless. So
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing to talk about when talking about sideboarding is how you approach building your sideboard.
well no, see you get 15 cards.
Yes.
And you're allowed to bring
these are our up to 15 points on how to sideboard.
No, okay. So, like, when you guys are going to build your sideboard for your deck, what's the first thing you're looking at?
That I have enough sleeves.
All right, step 1. Done. Step 2.
Because okay, anybody who's in the middle of a tournament, like putting cards face down, pulling out sleeves, like re-sleeving cards from their unsleeved sideboard, like that should be a slow play warning.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Brierly in a PTQ yelled at me about it one time. He's like, you know, you only have 3 minutes, right? I was like, yeah, but I only took 30 seconds to sideboard because I'm not slow like everyone else. And then he just went, fair. Because like I was super fast. I was just like, I didn't bring enough sleeves.
No, but seriously, like, what are you looking at when you guys are looking to build your board first?
Like broadly, broadly speaking, it's like, let's say I'm playing, well, actually, it doesn't really matter. I'm playing any deck. And then I'm like, okay, I need cards for aggro, midrange, and control decks.
Well, okay, yeah.
There you go. Like, that's a broad. That's like,
That's very broad.
comically broad.
A bit more specific is like the first thing you want to look at is what metagame are you going to be playing this deck in? Like, which
Yeah.
decks do you need before you even pick which cards you want? Which decks do you need cards for?
Yeah.
And how prevalent are those decks? Because like, if the meta is 50% one deck, then you can dedicate more of your sideboard to that matchup.
Yeah.
But if there's some matchup that you want to prepare for, but it's only 10% of the meta, then like, maybe add a couple cards that are good, but don't spend
So
in general, don't spend a lot of slots.
Well,
on
what I think the best suggestion actually though in that case is what you should be doing, and this is like a more fine-tuned point, is you should be looking for cards. This is like a golden rule in building sideboards. Actually, you should be looking for cards that have an overlap.
Yeah, so
against
cards that
multiple
are not
matchups.
just good against one deck specifically; they're good against multiple decks.
Yes.
Yeah.
cards that can pivot, as we've mentioned previously.
Yeah, but cards like you want to find quote unquote like hate cards, I guess. Like sideboards and standard aren't kind of built like that, but you want to find like in modern it's the case, right? You
Yeah.
want to find hate cards that like get at different people at once. Like
Yes.
there's a reason like in modern people play surgical extraction over other graveyard hate because they want to get people at instant speed and which covers more bases against more decks
Mhm.
and more interactions. Like there's certain reasons to do it. Not to mention just losing life with Death Shadow, but like there are just like a ton of like different bases, I guess, to cover, right? So
Mhm.
like that's one of the things you can do. So like for example, Tireless Tracker is a card that while it's not great right now in standard anymore, like it feels like you just are so behind if you play it on turn
Yeah.
3 or turn 4. It just isn't good enough anymore because the format's kind of, I don't know, it's just not.
It's a bigger standard. Decks are more powerful.
Yeah. And so, but post board, everyone slows down, right?
Right.
Everyone. So it's kind of like Tireless Tracker can come in against aggro decks. Like people will bring it in against mono red. Like I've seen Phil do it. Like Phil will bring in like Tracker against mono red. And like in against mid range, and it comes in against control, right? Like if you think that the metagame broadly in standard slows down,
Yeah.
maybe you don't bring it against mono red. Like I still maybe wouldn't. I'm not sure if he did. I've seen people do it though, right? But you definitely bring it against like zombies,
Mhm.
control, the mirrors, like mid range, like the rug energy mid range mirrors. Like so this card is like kind of overlaps, right? It's like
Yeah.
a great sideboard card. You kind of bring it in because the meta game slows down generally. So you bring in Tireless Trackers. So this is like a perfect sideboard card because it can come in multiple matchups, right? Whereas like Nissa's defeat
Yeah.
to like
Obviously, that's very narrow.
it's so narrow. Like the defeat cards are so narrow, but you saw way more Chandra's defeats when mono red was like 80% of the metagame.
Yeah.
So this is like, this is like one of those cases where like ideally in an ideal sideboard world, you can bring in sideboard cards that tag
and these
multiple matchups.
Well, yeah. The Tireless Tracker sort of fills this role of like a card advantage engine that also is kind of a threat. And so this is the reason you see like one Ob Nixilis in a sideboard or like an extra Chandra in the sideboard, because it's just this sort of drawing cards and killing things is going to be good in pretty much every matchup.
Yeah, like you bring in Ob Nixilis, like when you play Green Black Energy, you're bringing in Ob Nixilis in any mid range mirror.
Yep.
And any control matchup.
Yes.
Right? Like
because it does things that are good in Magic if you have time to cast a 5-drop.
Right, and if the format slows down, it's good. Covers bases. Like these are like your
very safe sideboard cards.
Yeah, these are like your bread and butter sideboard cards, right? Like these are cards, and then tuning it from there is a little more specific, right? Like you have certain cards based on like, okay, like I'll have this one card for this deck that's 12% to the metagame. I'll have this one card for, right? Like
yeah. And I mean, obviously, when you're looking at the metagame, if a deck that is widely considered as one of your worst matchups is a larger part of that metagame, you're going to be you're going to be putting aside more slots in your board for that deck, correct?
Yeah, of course, right? Like that's why it's always kind of easy in some ways to like build, let's say, like mid-range sideboards, because you kind of can already pivot against like most things because your deck is just a good card deck in some ways, right? So like that's easy but there are matchups, for example, like slow dirtily control decks who game one just get like annihilated by mono red, right? So their board is like, I don't know, 4 authority of the console.
Oh yeah,
like
when I was playing Grixis, it was 10 cards in for mono red.
Right, exactly, because the matchup's just horrendous, right? So yeah, like you obviously skew the metagame. Like you don't need, like when you're playing like Approach of the Second Sun control, they probably have like 8 or 9 sideboard cards for mono red, right? Even though mono red isn't even a huge part of the metagame anymore. It's just that they don't need cards for anyone else. They need 4 authority of the consoles to stand a chance in that matchup.
Yeah.
Right? They have to have that card or they are like probably dead. Even with like the main board Fumigate Blessed Alliance, like they still need that card to win, and they still need to bring in like Regal Caracal, like 3 of them, right? Like they bring in a lot of cards, and it's because like they don't care about playing against, I don't know, teamer mid range. They don't care. That matchup's easy. They'll bring in like 2 or 3 cards, like a couple negates, which are again are like a bread and butter blue card, right? Like it comes in against like mid range decks, comes in against control decks, like. So they bring in those kind of safe cards, but like they bring in specific hate for mono red and a bunch of them because they know what their weakness is.
Yeah, so you're kind of hinting or already getting to like our next point that we have lined up here, but this is what does a sideboard in a linear deck look like versus a sideboard in a mid-range deck? And we started off by kind of explaining mid-range sideboards. Like, you have 3 or 4 cards for each matchup that you think will be around. You have a lot of 1s and 2-ofs to kind of shore up the parts that your main deck is missing, because mid-range decks they can already kind of answer everything. So you just make it so that you take out the things that are not as good against the threats you're going to play and bring in your removal that's a bit better. And it just kind of tunes your deck, but doesn't really change it that much. But then, as you were saying, with Approach of the Second Sun control, or like a lot of these green-white ramp decks, because they have matchups that are so bad, say mono-red, they'll have like 10 or more cards dedicated to that matchup, and they'll have a lot of 4-ofs. Like, I need 4 of the Authority Consoles. I need 4 Sunscorched Champions. Like, you see more 3 and 4-ofs for their very bad matchups, because they also, on the flip side, have matchups that are very good for them, and they just don't even need to worry about sideboarding because the matchup's so easy.
Yeah, and like this is like part of, I guess, like, the kind of overarching point that Alex made about like having the correct number of ins and outs, right? Like you don't need to board in 4 Ob Nixilis for the mid-range mirror. That's like overkill.
Yes.
And beyond just like that, what I also mean by correct number of ins and out is, say, there's no point of having 8 cards in your sideboard for mono red if you don't have 8 cards in your main deck that you can take out.
I see people do this. I see people do this all the time.
This is a huge mistake a lot of players do, and it's a big thing I always make sure I have when I'm building my sideboard.
I do this as well. Yeah, this is actually a huge tip. I can't believe I didn't even think of this.
Yeah, no, that's actually what I meant. When I put that point.
My bad.
But because if I have 8 cards in my sideboard for mono red, but I can't actually take out 8 cards from my main deck, you're wasting slots in your sideboard.
Yeah,
because like if I can't cut 8 cards from my main deck without hurting my actual game plan of my deck, Like there's no point.
Yeah.
The constructed decks I've ever done best with, and I built the sideboard myself kind of thing, or even I haven't, even if I'm just like not decking off whatever, like it doesn't matter, I've changed sideboards. I've always gone through, like if I was serious about a tournament, like the night before or whatever, or before I played, doesn't matter, like made notes quick to myself of like whether I wrote them down or not, like, okay, in this matchup, like these 4 come out, these 4 come in, right?
Yeah, that's
like,
always I've done best.
If I'm boarding in these 6, I know exactly what I'm boarding out, right?
Exactly,
Without ruining my deck. And then I'm like, wait, I can't board these out. Okay, I need to change my sideboard, right?
Like, I've definitely done this in the past, and I see you can like just walk around to Magic tournaments. You see players do this all the time. They play game 1, whatever happens, they goof to their sideboard, they pull a bunch of cards out of their sideboard and set them down, like 5 or 6 cards. They put their sideboard back, then they pick up their deck, they take out like 2 or 3 obvious things, and then they just start tanking. Like, what else do I take out? I don't know what else to take out. I don't know how to sideboard in this matchup. I'm not sure what's good. I know what's good. I don't know what's bad. I don't know what to remove. And usually in this scenario, the correct answer is nothing. You shouldn't take anything else out. The rest of the cards in your main deck are better, but they like punk themselves into thinking they need to take out more, and they make their deck worse.
Yeah.
Because when they built their sideboard, they just thought like, oh, this is good versus this, and this is good versus that, and oh, this also seems sweet, and they just like put a bunch of things in the sideboard, not thinking about you don't ever have room to bring these all in, and yet when they go to sideboard, they do.
Yeah, sideboarding like is, and it's funny. It's like one of the most important decisions you make in Magic. You play more post board games than you play game 1s. Like sideboarding how your deck sideboards is actually more important than its game 1.
Yeah.
Like you should be knowing, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, I didn't even think to suggest this because it's just a normal thing for me to know this is out. This is in.
Well, the way I like to do it is when I'm looking, like I usually have my 60 cards picked out before I build the sideboard. And what I like to do is say, okay, I want these 5 cards in my main deck are absolutely horrendous for Smarty vehicles. So I should be looking to get 5 cards to swap those out in my sideboard, right? And then maybe, okay, these 4 cards are really bad versus mono red in my main deck. So I should have at least 4 cards on my board that I'm going to be bringing.
Yeah, I
for
actually
mono red.
like that.
So that's kind of how I like to approach it.
I like that approach much more than what we were saying earlier when we were talking about like number of slots based on Metashore. I actually like this approach much more. Like,
well, no, this still takes the meta into consideration.
It takes the meta into consideration, but like before you even start picking sideboard cards, look at your main deck and figure out how much room you have for each matchup.
Yeah, because like your main deck is already going to be configured to what you're expecting to see in the metagame already, right?
True.
So you might have cards in your main deck that are already kind of there because mono red is such a huge portion of the metagame. So you're going to have less cards that you're going to need to take out in that matchup. So, that kind of weight.
Yeah, that's like the best approach. You're right. Yeah, that's really, because that's how I do it too. I'm like, okay, what comes out? And then I will cut sideboard cards like, this card is sweet. I do want to play this Notion Thief in Legacy, but like, do I really need it? Like, is it hateful enough? Like, what am I even bringing it in against? Right? Like that. And I'm like, I just don't have room. Like the sideboard's way too tight. And like, what am I like, and I know, and then it means also like, what am I bringing out from the main deck for this? Right? Like that is better than a real sideboard card. Like, should I just mainboard this card? Right? Like there's so many decisions. Like you have to think about like, okay, like in this and you can be pretty broad about it. Like in control matchups, what do I bring out in my main deck? If I'm playing, let's say Teamer Energy, okay, well I'll bring out this magma spray for sure. Like, maybe if you have 2, both magma sprays, obviously. And then from there, it's kind of like, okay, well, what else isn't great, right? Like we kind of have to like parse this out. So then we know like we can bring in these cards for control. You know, like, so it's, like, then you know how many slots you have. And then you can start sacrificing certain matchups as well. Like post-board, you can sacrifice the amount of post-board cards you have based on meta percentages or like how you think the deck performs, if it's favored or unfavored. Like if you're already favored and you think you're favored mostly post-board anyway, like you can take that into consideration. But like, I think from there, like you can't even get to that point without doing what you're talking about, which is like, how many cards can I even board out?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a huge mistake players make all the time. You see it probably like everyone who's listening like probably does it. Like
I do
it all the time accidentally too.
Yeah.
Like people don't even board in limited. Like I'll like always look at my sideboard when I'm playing draft or like, and you know what I mean? But I see like people not do that and I'm like, come on, there's like a defeat in there. I know there is.
It happens the most if I'm playing like a random standard event and I just copy a deck list. Then you don't know what's going on. And then that's when you're tanking. You're like, I don't know what's actually good or not.
Yeah.
But if you're putting the time in to prepare for a tournament, this is how you should be approaching.
Yeah, if you've like prepared for a tournament and you're playing against a matchup that you expected, you should not have to think about your sideboard. You should already have a plan and just do it.
Yep. Yeah, it should just be, You don't
Yeah.
deviate. You have already made your decision. You've thought about it. You know, even in not a major event, like even weekday events, though, this isn't that much work to think, okay,
Right.
before I'm looking at my 75, right? Okay, what comes out, what comes in, what comes out, what comes in. You can actually do that really quickly too if you're just playing on the fly. Like what comes out, what comes in. If you copy the deck off the internet, presumably the person who played and built that deck had thought about this.
Yeah.
So like, you know, think about it when you look at the deck list. Like, okay, what comes out in this matchup, what comes in.
Mhm.
Think about it through logically. And if you make any changes, you need to think about why you're making those changes. Like what's going to come out, what's going to come in and where. So yeah, it's a huge point for people.
And another latch onto this, I'm going to jump down our list a little, but play versus draw when it comes to sideboarding. The biggest thing is your deck should almost never be the same
There are
on
exceptions,
the play
but
versus. Yeah, like obviously almost never.
Yeah.
But you should be changing your like at least a few cards, or one or two.
Yep.
Play
Yeah.
versus draw, and like this also you can when you're looking to build your sideboard, you're looking at your 6. We're like, okay, on the play versus mono red, these 4 cards are worse, but maybe on the draw, maybe only 3 cards are bad.
I mean, you're allowed
So,
to
like,
write down
yeah.
sideboard notes in Magic tournaments. Like it's a fine thing to keep with your life pad. Just at the back of your life pad, you have your sideboard notes. There you go. Like you are allowed to have these written down.
Mhm.
So, you know, like it's something to consider, I think. I don't do it, but like it's probably good practice.
Yeah, exactly. But the biggest point here is that there's going to be cards that are better that are in your main deck that are better on the play post board.
Oh, you mean like Long Tusk Cup?
Yeah. So we can talk about this Long Tusk Cup example right now.
Well, yeah, I was
That Adam's been hinting at.
playing the Standard Showdown or whatever on this weekend, and I played Teamer Energy, and I was playing against a friend of mine who we were playing the Mirror, and I boarded differently for both games 2 and 3, and on the draw game 2, I boarded out all my copies of Long Tusk Cub, which he argued wasn't correct, and he just like left all 4 copies of Long Tusk Cub in all 3 games, which is no way that's correct. But so I'll link up this episode. But the reason was my logic was whether I'm correct or wrong. But I talked to some other people, and they like, you know, players, I respect their opinions on this. Like, and I respect the friend I was playing against too. But like, I just disagreed with him on this case that Long Tusk Cub on the draw in the Mirror is risky because if they play Cub and then you play your second land, you can't really play your Cub because if they just like cast removal spell and hit you with the Cub, it's over.
Mhm.
Right? Like you fall. That's so much to fall behind.
Yeah.
And you want to board in the extra braid in your sideboard usually, or extra 2 of braids. And the other reason was that, like, this is on the draw specifically, right? And that one of the other reasons is that the games tend to go longer, and you don't really want to go in on your energy on a Long Tusk Cub because for every 2 energy, for example, this is just one of the bunch of reasons. For every 2 energy you spend on Cub, like 1 energy spent on Harness Lightning trades with it. So you're trading down on energy for the removal spell the deck plays. Not only that, like they're gonna play big creatures, especially let's say in the like Woodland Wanderer builds. Like it's even my point is even more valid on that, right? Like let's say they play turn 2 Conduit, you play turn 2 Cub, then they just make a 6/6 Woodland Wanderer on turn 3.
Yeah.
Like your Cub looks pretty bad. You would have like killed to just have the removal spell for the Servant, right? So I think it's kind of like you have to prioritize like slowing down, and also post board like Whirler Virtuoso matters a lot, so you kind of like can chump with Thopters, and like you want to spend your energy there. You want to spend your energy on Bristling Hydras, you know, like so which can't be killed.
Not if you're playing Woodland Wanderer.
Yeah, not if you're playing Woodland Wanderer. That card's a mirror breaker. So yeah, it's like, but his argument was, and this is like reasonable too, and like I'd still like to like hear more opinions and thought on it. But his argument was that Long Tusk Cub later in the game, when you have a bunch of energy, can trade with the Bristling Hydra, which is true until you like go all in to block and spend your energy and they Harness Lightning it. Like, I think good players will be aware of that.
Yeah.
So I think Cub is like risky on the draw, but on the play, it's a card that you get free wins because of what I just said.
Yes.
Right? Because
Yeah.
people leave their Cubs in and they play them on 2 instead of like they boarded, you know, whatever, something else into like answer Cub, and then they just get run over. I don't know. It's close, but like I think Long Tusk Cub's like more powerful in the play. In the Teamer Energy Mirror, it's completely different. In green black energy.
Yeah.
Where you're never boarding Long Tusk Cub out, which is like another topic, right? With surrounding Long Tusk Cub.
I mean, just to illustrate quickly like the difference, because you were saying the Harness Lightning thing in the Mirror is that like the Harness Lightning is more efficient with its energy on killing Cubs. But at a green black, when you have a Winding Constrictor and you're putting 2 counters on it for 2 energy, suddenly it's not as efficient, and oftentimes you can make it big enough that Harness Lightning just can't kill it.
Yes. The other reason is the overload concept.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, the other reason is, and we'll mention this a bit later, but like you never want to.
Well, this is a play draw topic.
It's a play draw thing, but like in green black, you are also never going to take out any of your 2-drops because all of them are so threatening that they all have to die. And so if you just have more 2-drops than they have removal spells, like one of them is going to stick and do work.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like if they fatal push your cub, your constrictor sticks.
Yeah.
Right. And then the game's over. If they fatal push your winding constrictor, the cub sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Then the game's over. Like, you know what I mean? You're 2-drop, or if they just don't you also, you know, as green black player, like you always want to have a 2-drop on 2 because you want to punish them for not having the fatal push or the harness lightning because they only have like 4 to 6 removal spells. If they don't have it, but you have 12 2-drops in your deck, basically, right? If they don't have it, you get them.
Yeah, more than 12. You have like 16.
Yeah, like you just play so many that like they have to almost have one in their opening hand, or you get to start running away with the game, which is exactly what you want. So you never board out 2-drops in that matchup. Cub is a whole different beast in that deck.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. It's like the example we were going to use, but it's like kind of worse. And Long Tusk Cub is on theme. Was during Miracles before it was banned. It was like a debate people would have about whether you boarded out counterbalances against Abrupt Decay decks. And I never would because my logic was, well, no, against those same decks that are playing Tarmogoyf and Deathrite Shaman, you are bringing in Rest in Peace and Blood Moon, which are also Abrupt Decay targets, right? So if you board out your 4 counterbalances and bring in 2 Blood Moon, 2 Rest in Peace, they're leaving in their 4 Abrupt Decays. Like,
right, now still none of your enchantments are going to stick.
Right, so you just boarded for nothing. You essentially boarded nothing, like 4 cards for nothing. Like it's a net balance, like, and your stuff just still gets Abrupt Decayed at equal
right. But
parity.
if you leave in 8 enchantments, then one of them will stick and be good enough.
And they're all completely game winning.
Yes.
Right? Like Blood Moon, it lights out. Like, not always, but a lot of the times. And Rest in Peace is most certainly lights out because their deck plays Deathrite Shaman and Tarmogoyfs. Like, the rest of the creatures suck, right? In the bug decks. This is like a bug deck example, right? In Legacy. And it was like, people would argue, and I'm like, no, you just bring in like 8 enchantments and overload them. This happened in Standard with Detention Sphere and Oblivion Ring. People would like, oh, like, I don't know if I want to board them out, you know? It's like, no, just bring in more stuff and overload their 4 answers. So that's one way to board. There are like obviously like different ways to board, but like this comes up a lot, right? Which is like,
this is all like adding and removing targets.
Right. Like you need to think about like how many targets you want to have. Like, well, you know, if it was, okay, well, my Miracles list isn't playing Rest in Peace and Blood Moon in the sideboard. Okay, well, then maybe we can talk about having an alternative thing you bring in and board out your counterbalances, right? But these are like really important sideboarding decisions. But if you're going to have Blood Moon, right? And it's the same thing with like, I think with Long Tusk Cub and like the Teamer Energy Mirrors, like, I think you're bringing in more important spells when you're on the draw. So you board them out. And like, you can't overload in the Teamer Energy Mirror, right? Like, you can't add more 2-drop threats. You don't have any in the board.
Yeah.
You don't have any more 2-drops. Your 2-drops are Servant of the Conduit and Cub. You don't have more to bring in, you know?
Yeah.
So like, and the other reason is on the play, you actually almost always want a 2-drop, whether it's Servant or Cub, because they have to kill both on the play.
Yeah.
And then that's the other reason I boarded mine out on the draw. You need all the answers you can get to their 2-drops, because if they turn 3 Chandra, you're dead. If they turn 2 Cub and it lives, you're dead, right? So on the draw is different than the play.
Yeah, exactly. Now, bouncing back up the list, boarding against what your opponent is boarding. So Cam, do you want to touch on this a little bit?
Yeah, so like, this kind of, we're mentioning it a bit in the play versus draw, but once you have a sideboard built and you're actually sitting down to play your match, the next most common mistake that I see a lot of people make is they sideboard so that the deck they present for game 2 is good against their opponent's game 1 deck. And a lot of people don't consider that they need to make their deck into a version that's good against what their opponent will be presenting for game 2. And you see a lot of times, I mean, like one of the most stereotypical examples of this is you're playing against like some blue control deck, some Gear Hulk control deck, and so you take out all your removal. Like, I'm going to take out my Fatal Pushes, I'm going to take out my Grasps, they have no targets. Like, I just need more. I need to overload my threats so that they eventually run out of removal and one of them sticks, etc. And then they play a turn 2 thing in the ice, and they flip it, and you take 7 and you die.
Bottom right, bud.
Like, exactly because you presented a deck that's good against their game 1 deck, not realizing or forgetting that their game 2 deck is going to have things that need to be removed with that removal.
Right, like if you're playing mono red, they're going to bring in Kalitas.
Right.
So don't waste your like deal 4s on 3/3s and 2/2. Like, you have to stop Kalitas. That's
and don't take them out. Like, it'd be very easy. Like, when I was playing Grixis Control, like, it'd be very easy to look at the Collective Defiance in your hand and be like, oh, this doesn't do anything. So I'm going to board these out because it doesn't kill Gearhulks. And then if you're playing against control and they slam a Kalitas and suddenly you just don't have an answer.
Yeah, you just actually, it's just gonna win the game. It's just a matter of time because you don't have an out. It was like when I was playing one of the most popular deck right now in Modern is actually like Scape Shift, right? Like Titan Shift.
Okay.
And I was playing it, and like I thought my opponent had Blood Moons, and I was like, I guess I'll leave in these dumb Prismatic Omens. Then like it's my only out, but I have to play it post Blood Moon because of the way the larynx work.
Oh yeah.
But I was like, I don't know. I don't know if he'd play Blood Moon in his 3-color control deck. He did.
Okay.
So stuff like that, right? I was like, okay, well, like I can never beat a Blood Moon. It's the only card I can never beat in my deck, so I can't take that risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing for Mono Red, right? Like you can't take that risk, even if you're wrong. Is like what I'm trying to get to, right? Like, they didn't bring in Kalitas, but they could have and just crumpled you,
Right.
So like that's an important thing to know too. Is like you have to take that risk, I guess, like that calculated risk, because this came up with like an Empty the Warrens conversation, right? Where like Ryan didn't board in Empty the Warrens because he thought that his opponent would bring in an answer to Empty, and it turned out his opponent didn't even think to. So he kind of played himself, but it's like you have to take that risk of like I bring in Engineer Explosives against Storm post board because I'm like, if they make goblins, I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then if I have a dead card in my hand, I'm like, I'd rather have this dead card than just be dead.
Right.
Like I used to do that back when I used to play Green Red Tron in Modern. I'd always leave in Pyroclasm against Storm because you just can't, like, you still have to be able to answer Empty the Warrens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
it's
stuff
just
like
the
that
same
is like
thing,
you
yeah.
have to keep these like corner case answers almost sometimes when you board and just accept it. If they didn't board in Empty and they got you. But
Yeah.
like, this has to happen.
Need to be aware of like common sideboarding strategies. So like study sideboards of matchups you think you're going to play. Because like, Thing in the Ice is one example, or like
Empty the Warrens is a huge one because like a lot of people play Modern. This is a massive one that people screw up.
Or
Yeah,
people
and like this is jumping back to the first point. When you're looking at the metagame, you have to also know what your opponents are sideboarding.
Storm, the third most popular deck in Modern right now, basically, right? According
Yeah.
to the metagame. And it's like people just don't even board in for Empty the Warrens to me. It's crazy. Like,
or even, I guess, not like your dead on the spot example, but recently at a standard event, I was playing like a Approach of the Second Sun control deck, and you would bring in Dispel against Teamer, against any deck with blue, because like you need to dispel their negate.
yeah.
A lot of times, though, like the Dispel ends up stuck in your hand as they're just playing creatures and casting planeswalkers, but like you can't beat negate. So if the Dispel ends up dead in your hand and they don't have the negate, that's better than them negating your only win con.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like you still need to plan for a future. Like
Right.
You need to have a game plan to beat.
Like Dispel is miserable against their game 1 deck. You would never want Dispel.
well, yeah, it doesn't do anything.
Right. It has 0 targets, except for Harness Lightning, which they can't cast because you have no creatures. So it like actually does nothing, but you need to know that it's going to have targets post board, and so you need to bring it in. It's going to have very important targets.
Yeah, this is a huge one. I don't know for sure if they're boarding in this card, but I cannot beat it, so I can't take that risk.
Right, like they might think that they don't want to rely on negate, and they're going to bring in some aggressive creatures, and they're going to try and just attack you before you can approach the second time.
But you're already keeping the game plan for that, right? The spell is like you maybe boarded out a card or two.
Right.
So like you still like if you were sideboarding well with Approach of the Second Sun, you're still able to beat their game 1 plan.
Right. Yeah, that their game 2 plan might
unless
be
you wildly overboarded.
Make it slightly more aggressive, but like I'd rather have potentially dead cards if my opponent sideboards strangely than get blown up by negates.
Board out all 4 Fumigates, board in 4 Dispels against them. All right, I'm good. I can beat negate. You know what I mean? Like, don't do that. That's bad.
Oh, but that's also an interesting, like, talking about Fumigate, this idea of overloading, like, you don't, I'm struggling what to say here, but like leaving in Fumigate is another target that they need to negate.
Yeah.
And so like if you don't want to bring in Dispel, you might just bring in extra Wrath, because then even if they negate the Approach of the Second Sun, one of your extra Wrath rollers, like one of these big sorceries they can't beat, will resolve. You might try this instead of a Dispel plan.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to think about it, but like that's just like having a plan of how you're going to board, which is like the real issue, right? Like,
right.
Most people just don't have a plan for their sideboard, right? Like this comes out, this comes in. So, and that's like so important. Like the number of ins, number of outs that Alex talked about is like maybe one of the most, actually I think it's the most important point about sideboarding is like, yes, you can't have 10 cards in your board for a control match if you can only take out 4 cards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
like wasting slots in your sideboard is like your
It's
own
just criminal.
It's your own death wish. You're digging your own grave.
Yeah.
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 It's just so insane, actually, like that, how often it happens. Like I've done it. Everyone's guilty of it. Like I'm guilty of it. But like, it's so important. Like that's the edges you get in standard. That's how you win in modern. You know what I mean? Is like,
in modern, it's
the most
massive.
important.
Yeah.
It's literally the most important thing. In Legacy, it's like less important because like everyone just plays Force of Will. But like, but in modern, it's like, yeah, it's literally all like almost all games seem decided by post or sideboard cards.
Oh
Like,
yeah, no, exactly.
So knowing this and knowing like what you can afford to bring in, and also like especially in modern, holy Christ, like hitting the spread.
Yeah, this isn't a point we put in the notes, but if we're comparing sideboarding across formats, like modern is the one where your sideboard is 100% the most important.
It's the most rewarding kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's the thing that rewards players the most and decks the most, and also it rewards them the most for having sideboard cards that pivot, right? That cover the spread.
Yeah.
Like this is a sideboard card, but it's good against Affinity, it's good against Zoo, it's good against, you know what I mean, like Death Shadow. It's like that's the dream sideboard card. Like we tag like 3 matchups, and like obviously certain sideboard cards only go into certain decks, so maybe you're just the lucky deck that gets a sideboard card that can go against like 4 or 5 popular metagame decks, right? But like that's the dream for modern. In standard, it's less so important, but in modern, that's like, you know, it usually involves white cards.
Yeah.
Because white's the most like powerful sideboard colors usually.
Oh yeah.
And has cards that can kind of tag everyone, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Any other points to?
Yeah, I had one more thing that we didn't have on the list here, but that I wanted to bring up. So you were mentioning, Adam, earlier, these sort of like generically like bread and butter sideboard cards, Tyler's Trackers, Obnixilis, like extra planeswalkers that come in pretty much every matchup. Maybe we could talk a bit about why those cards, like if they're coming in every matchup, why aren't they main deck? And what's the difference between a sideboard card that always comes in and a main deck card?
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I guess like you kind of like you always sideboard. I guess like game 1, you always assume that your deck is more synergistic than normal. Postboard, I should say, which I consider to be normal. Like your game 1s are more synergistic. Like you are expecting that they don't have as much removal or answers for your Long Tusk Cub and your Winding Constrictor if you're playing green black energy, right? You're expecting that like your game 1 plan of like putting a bunch of counters on stuff and making big idiots will be good enough.
Right,
because that's your deck's game 1 plan.
Because your opponent hasn't tuned their deck yet to fight specifically what you are doing.
Exactly. So post board, a card like Obnixilis, you know that they're going to really dedicate themselves to stopping Winding Constrictor from running rampant. So you need a card that kind of doesn't care that they have fatal pushes or grasps or whatever. You have this card that just can kind of like it's good on its own. Right. These kind of like broad bread and butter cards are almost kind of mid-range cards. Like you bring in cards because the game will slow down because your like kind of synergistic game plan is being disrupted, right? Post board. So you need cards that are just generally good, that are okay to draw. They're okay to top deck. They're okay on their own. They kill a creature or draw a card, you know, like that's why planeswalkers are good. They just create value on their own.
But you don't want these sorts of cards game 1 because if you're assuming that your synergies will stay assembled, then Obnixilis is not as strong.
Exactly.
As a synergy card.
Yeah,
but if your synergies are being disrupted, then Obnixilis is better.
Your game plan is different, right? Like you'll play more patient post board. Like maybe they have a Wrath now. Like you don't want to walk into it, or they have more Wraths. Like there's like a whole bunch of reasons, right? Like you can pick and choose your spots. Like post board games are more about like pivoting, right? Like they're more about maneuvering, so you can still have your strategy go off. It just might take you a while, and they'll have more resistance. Right? It seemed like mono red, right? Like mono red goes bigger. They're still trying to pressure your life total and get to a point where they have no cards in hand. They're ramming up redding you, but they'll take a little longer to get there because they know they have to, because they know like you'll have annoying little life gain cards. Like you'll have magma sprays maybe, right? Which aren't even that good against them. That's why they've moved into a sideboard plan where like now they just bring in like Chandras, right? Like these like general mid-range cards that get value, but they don't go with like the Hazard plan in the same way.
Right.
So just
because I guess
that, right?
mono, like especially red decks, you hear a lot of like it's a game 1 deck. It steals game 1s.
Oh yeah, all
but
aggro decks. Like
if we like imagine that red decks were presenting their post board decks game 1, like they thought, oh, I'm bringing these cards in all the time, so I'm going to main deck them. Then you just wouldn't steal as like you're removing that advantage. You wouldn't steal as many game 1s because your deck is slightly slower. Your opponent's untuned deck now has time to find its slightly incorrect answers to answer what you're doing.
Think about Mardu vehicles. This is probably the perfect example. Like, remember when they would just board into control, playing
every
Planeswalker
game.
control every single time?
Right. Why did they not present that game one?
Right. Even though they all post board like almost against every single deck in the format.
Right.
They boarded into this. Well, why didn't they do it game one? Well, because people didn't have answers for Toolcraft Exemplar in game one.
Right.
And if you won the die roll, you won the match. So like they were banking on like they just don't have answers because you're not going to main board answers for a bunch of 1-drops in your deck, or your deck can never beat any other deck.
Right.
So your kind of like synergistic game plan of just like going low to the ground and going real fast is very good game one until people start to have answers for Heart of Kirin. Like there weren't that many answers for Heart of Kirin during Mardu's dominance, but people were boarding in like Aether Meltdown and stuff, right? But like you couldn't play those game one.
Right.
I mean, Fatal Push existed, but
Yeah, but
you didn't have a card like a Braid.
Yeah, now it's like everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, like Harness Lightning existed too, but that still needed help to kill Heart of Kirin as well. So
and energy decks weren't as common kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like so like the game one different. It's almost even think of a crazy like wacky combo deck like New Perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Like game one, they don't have negates because they're just trying to combo you because like they know game one you can't interact. You're not doing anything.
They don't need counter magic game one because you're not going to have it game one.
Right, but post board they're going to have negates if you're playing Teamer Energy because they know you're bringing in 4 negates.
Yes.
And they just need to buy time. Right? So or just combo off with negate backup.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to play these sideboard cards game one because like whatever, but that's different. They're not bringing in like Obnixilis, like generic,
Sure.
like what you're saying. But like I think this like New Perspectives example applies across the board. Is that game ones are all about these kind of like, what's my deck's game plan, right? Like what am I doing? Like I'm out here to like I'm either going to combo or I'm going to control the board or I'm going to smush face. Like
this configuration needs to be good against every matchup.
Mm-hmm.
So it just needs to somewhat ignore what my opponent is doing and have a game plan.
Yeah. Whereas post board, you're like, okay, well, they're going to try and do this.
Right.
So
they're
I
going
need
to either disrupt me or they're going to have better threats against me. So I need to switch a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
all right.
It's all like metagame thing. I guess the other thing is like, don't overboard, which is again, comes down to know your ins and outs, which is like probably the most important thing we talked about. And I can't believe I didn't even think about it. Like I misread what you wrote in the show notes. But yeah, like that's an overboarding thing, right? Like also don't take out 10 cards and bring in like 10 if you don't need 10 in the matchup. Like don't go crazy.
Yeah.
Like you hate losing to control. Like there are players, like we've all seen them. Like I hate losing to control, so I have like 14 cards on my board for control, and they just literally can't win any other matchup. Like
Yeah. Like what 14 cards are you taking out of your main deck?
yeah, like what is your main deck then? Like
Yeah.
Yeah, their main deck just doesn't do anything. They
Yeah.
then play Drago against the control deck, waiting for their 3 counter spells they've drawn to do anything.
Yeah, like exactly. So don't overboard, and know when to do nothing. Like Mike talked about this in the RPTQ that he qualified for the Pro Tour, right? When like he played Mardu vehicles and like games where if he lost game one, he would like shuffle his whole sideboard in and then just leave it as a game one deck, but they wouldn't know. That's another thing. Like if you're worried and you don't want your opponent to know you're sideboarding, like get into the habit of just like shuffling all 15 cards and then pulling out 15 cards when you sideboard. It's the technical correct thing actually to do every single time you sideboard, but it's a pain in the ass, so no one does it. And like I understand, but he did it because he didn't want his opponent to know he was keeping his game one deck because he was on the play with Mardu vehicles. So he just went fast, and then game 3 he went to the Planeswalker plan, right?
In limited events like sealeds and draft and stuff, ones that I'm like I actually care about, I'll put like 4 extra basic lands in sleeves in my sideboard, and then like in between games, if I'm not making any changes, I'll just swap basics for basics, so it looks like I'm sideboarding.
Yeah, that's like a good strat. Like you should be like, if imagine your opponent like you saw like 4 magma sprays, right? From your opponent in limited, like that's their deck's hilarious if that has 4 magma sprays. But let's say it does 4 shocks or magma sprays. Don't be afraid to like board out all your X2s, right? Because they're all dead, right? Like things like that are like how you sideboard for limited. You try and make your opponent's cards dead because no one really sideboards in limited, and they don't have the ability to board out those 4 magma sprays for something, right? But you do if you have if they have like a bunch of 4-ofs, like it's rare that it comes up in limited. But if someone does have like a removal spell that happens to like line up well against your deck and they just shown you like 4 copies, like don't be afraid to board them out and try and make those 4 cards dead draws where they have to now like use them to get a 2 for they get 2 for 1.
Yeah.
So like things like that are like what come up in limited, I find. Like I do that a lot. And like I think that's a huge margin for me in winning a lot of limited because like I'm a quite good limited player these days and like I have a very good limited record in a lot of things. And like a lot of it comes into that. I board out cards that I'm like, that just doesn't match up. Like they have like 2, they show me like 2 or 3 rampaging hippos, like the 5/6 for 6. And I have like 3 5/5s in my deck. Like they're gone. Like I can't play this card. Like maybe I don't have a choice because I don't have anything better, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there are ways to like swap things out in limited, but obviously like limited's much
More broad.
yeah, it's interesting. So
Yeah.
that's a whole other conversation topic, but
Exactly. I guess we can wrap up sideboarding now.
Sure.
I
Thank
don't
you
think
all.
there's anything
Yeah.
else.
Thank
Just
you
think
all
about long tusk cubs.
for cutting me off, man.
Yeah,
Trying
well,
to do the outro.
get wrecked.
Thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure you check out wizardtower.com again for all your Magic single needs. Free shipping in Canada and the US on Magic singles. And however you listen to this podcast, whether it's on Podbean, iTunes, or your podcast app, leave us a review, rate the podcast, share it with your friends. Also, if you want to send us a blowout story, still running blowouts, send us a message on Facebook at Disorganized Wizard Club Podcast. Shoot us an email at disorganizedwizardclub@gmail.com. Or if you just have a topic for us to talk about, shoot us a message on
Yeah, any
Facebook.
interest,
We're always checking our messages.
We have like a really good response rate on the Facebook thing, actually. You know, it shows like when a business review, you know, you can look at like response time, like very responsive. Ours is
Yeah.
pretty good, actually. Thanks,
And,
Cam.
Always up to chat.
Also, some new exciting stuff. We should have a brand new logo by the time this podcast comes out.
Oh, yeah, that thing is
Yeah.
hype.
Yep.
Brand new logo design. Might be looking at getting a small run of T-shirts done.
Yeah, let
So
us know if you're interested,
If
actually.
if you're in the Ottawa area and you're interested in getting a Disorganized Wizards Club tee, shoot us a message.
Or a hat.
We'll start with T-shirts.
Okay.
Let's not go too crazy.
Whatever. Just message us what you'd be interested in.
Or if you're interested in general.
Yeah.
This is getting complicated.
Anyway, to summarize, smash that like button and check out our merch.
Yeah. Man, I lost my train of thought now. All right, we'll see you guys all next week.
Take care.
Later.